Throughout history, every war has always had a connection to money. But during World War I, the economy and the financial system became so deeply involved that their effects are still surrounding us today. In this video, we will examine in depth but quickly the economic side of the World War I that is rarely told in history books and see how it still affects our lives today. World War I is always told us through the heroism and sacrifice of soldiers on the battlefield. But like every war in history, World War I also had a hidden front that is not told in history books, the financial front. While soldiers were attacking each other on the battlefield, the real war was being fought in the balance sheets of bankers. The gold reserves of central banks, the bond markets, and the vaults of banks were the true battlefields. In fact, the winners and losers were determined on this hidden front. It became clear on a global scale that money is one of the most dangerous weapons ever created by mankind. 1914, the countdown to explosion in Europe. In the summer of 1914, Europe was like a bomb ready to explode. The competition between empires, driven by colonial ambitions, had reached an unsustainable level. But beneath this rivalry lay a bitter truth that few understood. To sustain a war on this scale, unimaginable amounts of money would be needed. The leaders who decided to go to war were not aware of this reality. At the time, the popular saying was, "The war will be over in a few months, we will be home by Christmas." All economic planning was made according to this schedule, and payments will be made the old-fashioned way, through public donations and gold reserves. They didn't even consider borrowing at this point. But the reality on the ground turned out to be very different. The money and the gold in the hands of the governments were consumed so quickly that the economic system began to collapse, and along with it, people's hopes. The end of an era, the fall of gold from its throne. In 1914, gold was still at the center of European economic system. Central banks were required to hold gold as a guarantee for the money they printed. This gold standard gave people confidence, but it came with a major problem for governments. They could only print as much money as they had gold. Gold was limited, but the cost of war was not. Factories had begun producing weapons, armies were growing, and expenses far exceeded what a short mobilization could handle. By the end of 1914, Germany's daily war cost had reached 10 million marks, and Britain's was 2.5 million pounds. It was impossible for the gold in the vaults to cover such massive spendings. Eventually, all the governments made the same decision one by one. The gold standard was suspended. From that point on, the money being printed was not backed by gold, but by the government's promise. This was one of the most crucial turning points in modern financial history. The chains binding money to gold were broken. Money ceased to be a real store of value and became a tool of belief controlled by governments. And inevitably, once they tested this freedom, no government ever went back to the old system. Germany, a war financed from the people's pockets. When the war began, Germany had another serious problem besides the battlefront. Its connection to the outside world was cut off by Britain's naval blockade. It could neither obtain credit nor earn income through foreign trade. While officials in Berlin searched for an answer to this question, how are we going to finance this war? A brilliant yet a terrible idea emerged: borrow from the people. A single slogan echoed everywhere: "Invest for the fatherland, join the victory bonds." Posters featuring heroic soldiers were distributed, and families were persuaded to invest their savings in the victory to come. Through this method, more than 100 billion marks were collected from the public, a sum that would equal trillions today. But when the promised victory never came, those bonds were reduced to nothing more than pieces of paper. The lifelong savings of millions of people evaporated overnight. The economic devastation shattered not only the wallets, but the nation's spirit as well. Broken trust and lost wealth turned into anger, and that anger would one day drive Germany into a far darker era. Britain and America, the shift in the money's direction. At the beginning of the war, Britain seemed to hold the advantage, but as the conflict dragged on, the growing cost became unbearable. While the sounds of gunfire echoed across Europe, The real battle was taking place in the heart of London, in the financial center. When the government could no longer keep up with the costs, it looked across Atlantic for help: America. The United States had not yet sent its soldiers to the front, but its bankers were already deeply involved in the war. British and French governments had fallen into the network of American financiers like JP Morgan. While European nations fought each other, America was making money. By 1917, when the United States officially entered the war, the invisible winner had already emerged: Wall Street. The heart of global finance was no longer in London, it was in New York. France and Russia, fragile empires. When the war began, France's economy was already strained. As the conflict dragged on, domestic borrowings was followed by loans from American bankers, which further weakened the country. Although France ended up on the winning side, what it truly won remains undebatable. Russia's situation was even worse. Its financial system was fragile, and the war devoured the economy. Inflation exploded, and eventually the patience of the people ran out. By 1917, the Tsarist regime collapsed, and the fuse of the revolution was lit by the failure of the financial system itself. The true cost of war: debt and inflation. When the guns finally fell silent in 1918, what remained was not only ruined cities, but also an enormous mountain of debts. Both sides had spent unimaginable sums. The gold standard has collapsed, and inflation turned into a raging beast. And of course, who paid the price? You can easily guess this: the people. Small investors, workers, ordinary citizens. Their life savings were reduced to worthless pieces of paper. The wealthy had already moved their money to the safe havens. In financial wars, the loser is always the same: the small saver. After 1918, a new monetary order. When the war ended in 1918, the picture was clear. Europe was in ruins, not only its cities but its economies. America's vaults, on the other hand, were overflowing with gold. The new financial system of the world was now New York. Britain and finance owed billions of dollars to the United States. To repay those debts, they turned to the defeated Germany. Through the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forced to pay 132 billion gold marks in reparations, an impossible sum. Germany kept printing money to pay, and the value of mark collapsed. By 1923, Germany entered a period of hyperinflation so severe that people needed bags of money just to buy a loaf of bread. But what truly collapsed wasn't just the economy, it was trust and hope. And from these ashes, a much darker era was born, one that paved the way for Adolf Hitler's rise to power. From history to today, the same game continues. World War I taught governments one crucial lesson: money didn't need to have a real value. They could print as much as money they wanted and sell the cost to the public under the name of patriotism. Governments had found it the easiest way to manage crises: mortgaging the future. Spend tomorrow's incomes to survive today's problems. And when tomorrow comes, that's someone else's problem. What should we care? Today, the same game continues. Numbers change, names change, but the story always remains the same. And here we have come to the end of our video. So tell me in the comments, do you think the history is written only by the victors? I am looking forward to your comments. If you like my video, subscribe my channel and join our epic journey throughout history. I hope to see you in our next video, which will be about another fascinating topic. Till then, take care.